Hello and welcome everybody to Around the Battleground. My name is LHS and I am your host. Today we're going to be talking about SML from this past week and breaking down a couple games from the next week. We're going to be breaking down the same thing for the SPL and looking ahead. And that's really like the biggest things we've got. There's no big roster news coming through. There's no big drama going on. We're still in the early stages of the league, so it's pretty straightforward, at least for the beginning. So we're going to start in the EU for the SML. Like I said, I don't really have anything to mess around with to start this episode. Usually, if we have, a co-host or a guest or something, I can, play off of that a little bit. No, we're just getting straight into it this week. So in the EU side of things, we have Team Queso at the top. Strangely enough, didn't really expect them to be able to kind of take the crown over Simplicity and Flashpoint. They are undefeated so far. But Simplicity in that number 2 role, looking as strong as ever, just having some tougher games. I think their schedule has been a little bit tougher than the Queso schedule thus far. Flashpoint in that 3rd spot. Horizon Union in that 4th spot is kind of shocking to me. Didn't expect either of the combined teams moving up in the EU SML side to really come out and do as much as they are doing, but I've seen a lot of good things from this Horizon Union squad. Out cold, not the bottom team for a change. Still look like they're knocked out, like they have no life, but they have more life than Exordium, who is at the bottom. So EU is an interesting race right now. I think the standings as they currently are subject to change pretty wildly. I think that 1 through 4 can really jockey back and forth a lot. Honestly, I could see Horizon Union making a run. They have a good foundation. They've got good ideas and good players, and it's really just putting that all together for them. And I think that if they really buckle down, they hit the VODs after every set, they scrim a ton, these guys could, on the back half of the season, come around and be absolute monsters for EU. I think Flashpoint historically has never finished a phase strong. They've always struggled to close out a season or a split or a phase or whatever, so they could fall. I think Queso inevitably falls apart as well. I think Simplicity finishes 1 or 2. Obviously, they've got a lot of talent and they've just been very consistent across their games. Queso and Flashpoint, on the other hand, have fluctuated a lot, so that gives room for Horizon to rise up and kind of steal a spot for LAN. It'll be really interesting to watch it all play out. As always, I mean, Out Cold could figure out what Smite game season 6 is. I don't think they will at this point. I think they're pretty much stuck in mediocrity unless they make like a big splash of a roster change. But I don't know what they could do there that would really fix their issues. And then Exordium, I think they're just being outclassed. They're coming up from the Combine into SML. It's good training for them, good learning, but, just being outclassed a little bit. And what can you do there? You're just here to have a good time and learn a lot and hopefully stay in the SML when the next season starts, because there's no information on any of that. But there you go. One more time. That is your current EU minor league standings. Moving across the pond, we've got NA, and at the top of NA is Hype Unit. Hype Unit has come out really strong. This is a combine team, but it's a combine team made up of a lot of competent players. Mollusk, Benny, these guys have been around. I think Pagon is probably one of the breakout stars of this team, who's coming out of fairly unknown territory. I think Benny and Mollusk obviously have, a record around themselves, but Pagon, Poppy, these guys are not as known quantities yet. So I think Hype Unit is coming out and surprising a lot of people. They come from the combine, but they've got guys who've been competing for a long time, and so they're able to find some of these wins. Sanguine in second place doesn't surprise me. They, I think, are the best team in NA. They have a couple issues with consistency. They have like a wobble, a variation of really great, amazing play, and then that's kind of counteracted by some play where it's not as great. But definitely a really strong squad. These guys have put in a lot of time and effort. I mean, you look at where they were at the start of the year and where they are now, and they have just progressed so much. These guys grind and grind and grind, and I'm really happy to see them where they are. Space Station Gold in third place. They scrim now, and now they're not the bottom team. I know that's kind of the meme and the joke around it, but since day one, that mentality has always been like, yeah, that sucks about Space Station, but that they've never been an awful team. I've since day one said that Matty Pocket is an SML level support, and he hasn't been the biggest detriment on his team. This is a team that knows who they are. They know how they want to play. And they've made some changes. Now they got Oceans in mid. They're adjusting themselves. Uzi, this week in his set looked pretty good. Uzi, has, when they were on the desk, they were breaking down everything. They did talk about how Uzi was once, one of those next guys up. He was in that category. He was in the same category as your Fine OK, as your solo troll now. But he's kind of gone the way, and I feel like, Solo or Troll's contemporary is Mando Warrior, and Mando Warrior hasn't really got his chance, right? He hasn't broken into the league, and I feel like Uzi is kind of like the older head version of Mando, where he's been around a while, he's been playing competitive, and he has the games where he's amazing, but there's something holding him back, and he's not quite, he's the journeyman solo laner. He hasn't really progressed up into that. Space Station looking good. Armada, surprisingly, falling down to fourth here, having a few roster changes, but still got Baskin on the team, right? You still got that, and it's really hard to fight into that a lot of times. But starting out a lot slower this time around than they did to start the year. And so we'll see if they kind of pick up or not. They do play us. They play Exilium next week. And so that'll teach us a lot about both Exilium and Armada. But I'll talk about that, later on, because Exilium. Cryptic and Exilium both tied for that fifth place spot, not having won a set, but each winning a game in a set. Cryptic making a lot of changes. They also changed their mid laner this week. They moved on from Shadow Chair and now have Cope moving over from jungle into mid, and then having, I believe it's Megxiety, who is now the jungle for that team. A weird move on their part. I think Cope, much better jungle, but for the sake of the team moving to where he needs to be, I don't understand the moves that Cryptic makes. They made a lot of roster changes, brought up basically an entire team from the combine into the SML, and then made further changes. There's a lot of movement and shifts in that roster, and I don't know that they're going to find solidarity. I think there's like weird vibes coming off of all the roster changes they make, and having Cope kind of flip around from so many roles. But we'll see if they'll be able to put together. I mean, they do have some solid pieces in that group. They just got to figure out a way to play together. So you got all these roster changes, the synergies are there. Do they, how are their scrims going? They haven't won a game, but are they scrimming a lot? Who knows? Just because you're at the bottom at the start of the phase doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay. Exilium, they played SSG gold, and managed to find their win. Looked really well. Honestly, a lot of good came from Exilium sets this week, and before today, every game had been a blowout. They look really outclassed, outpaced, but things finally starting to click, come together. The space station games were a lot closer than I think people thought they would be. A lot of team fights, a lot of the games were controlled by Exilium. And so if they can kind of keep that momentum going forward, I really do believe that, we can finish, and maybe third, fourth, maybe make a run at second, depending on what, how much we improve. That would be amazing. But I really do want to give a shout out. If you look at the first, few weeks of, moving from Combine in the SML, we had, one of our biggest problem points was the mid lane. Hythe was getting just outgunned a lot of the time, and he was getting, behind. He had a really bad KDA. And so I really got to give props to him, because he was going in, watching VODs, reviewing everything, making sure he wouldn't make the same mistakes, fixing some of his farming problems, his pathing and everything like that. And so I really got to give a big shout out to Hythe for putting in just a ton of work. And if you watch the games against Space Station Gold, like, you can really see a difference in his play. A lot of people are going to be memeing about, not beadsing the Blink Neja ult and everything like that. But it's really hard to beads a Blink Neja ult when you're on, West Coast ping. Everybody on the West Coast who plays competitively, I'm sure you can vouch for my man. Other than that, we're looking really strong. Our next game is going to be up against Armada. Armada has struggled a little bit, and I think, we're going to try to exploit that as much as possible. We've seen what, Renegades did to beat Splice. Armada is just the wannabe SML Splice. If we're like being really like generic and like being a really bad analyst. So what we got to do moving forward. We got, some VODs to review on them, some tape. I'm sure there's going to be plenty on us, but we've been changing our style almost every week, if I'm being honest here. So should be a good matchup. I'm hoping to get our first set win. I think we can do it. I think we have the capability. It's just whether or not things kind of break our way, and how much we take away from all of our scrims and VOD review for this week. So that's it for the SML. Now we get to go into the SPL, and there was a lot of stuff that happened here. So we had our week start off with E United SK and Rival Dig. E United 3-1 SK and Rival 3-1 Dignitas. And those are pretty important sets as well. The SPL is really broken down into three distinct categories. You have the top end, which is your Rival, your Dig, your Splice, your Renegades, your top teams. I flirt with the idea that PK isn't in that, but they definitely are. As well. So you have those, they're kind of like their own entity within the league, right? So they're at the top, and nobody's really breaking into that out of who's not those names. Then you have the middle of the pack, which is your E United and SK largely. It's just them. They're kind of jockeying for that, that middle dark horse spot who can take games off the top team. Then you've at the bottom, you've got your SSG, your LG, and your Obey. And that's kind of really the biggest, those are the big class divides in the SPL right now. So when we have E United playing SK, we learn a lot about the mid-table of Smite and how things are kind of developing outside of the top teams. And E United get the 3-1 against SK. And SK, they didn't particularly have the worst showing. We talk about them getting 3-0'd by PK, and that was probably the worst time we'd seen them out. They have close games, and then they just, can't put them away. Still some of that going on. this team struggles with consistency in that way. They have a lot of talent. They've got a lot of skill, but they just don't always put it together. United looking stronger and stronger. Imalidu has really come into his own on this squad. I'm really impressed. I didn't think that he'd be able to come in and be such a boon to his team. I really thought that him being on the squad would kind of be a hindrance. I thought Vedim kind of fit their play a little bit more, but United have a distinct, defined carry on their team right now. Imalidu fits that role really well and kind of allows the rest to play setup and kind of be the playmakers to his star play. So I'm excited to watch them grow, and I think they are establishing themselves as more of the dark horse than SK. I think SK, I think there's been too big of a change between when they beat rival at Worlds versus where they are now. I think SK, they're lacking a little to get over the finish line. Rival versus Dig. Rival versus Dig was interesting. A lot of people have various opinions between which team is the best team. Is it Rival? Is it Dig? Both of these teams had disappointing MSIs. Rival losing to Armada, Dig getting 3-0'd by Renegades. Neither one of them really having fun at MSI. So they both come in with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, playing some weird stuff. Dignitas starting. I believe Dignitas did this. They started Ataraxia in mid and Hurry in duo, and that was a bit interesting. Kind of because whether it's Hurry doesn't want to play the ADCs or it's that Ataraxia can't play the mages. You kind of mitigate that by putting your traditional mage player in that long lane, and you put your traditional hunter player into that mid lane for the pressure and everything. So kind of an interesting idea. Yeah, so Hurry was in duo all 4 games. Thanks, SB. So I really like that change of style. I don't think it works yet. I don't think we are in a place where everything is multi-positional like that, or because the game of Smite for so long has been played where I'm the ADC, I'm in the long lane. That's all I've done. That's all I know. So, for Ataraxia to move from the long lane to the middle lane, there's a lot of nuances that come with mid lane play that he's not going to be savvy to, right? And not to say that he's a bad player or anything like that. There's no knock on him in those regards. It's simply the fact that he doesn't have the same years of experience in that middle lane. And so you miss out on some of those things and the keys. It's a very different style of play. So from that aspect, I don't like it. I don't think we're ready for it. I think some teams could make it work, but I don't think that Dig is going to be one of those teams. I think a lot of people are trying to emulate what Renegades did at MSI, and I think that's kind of the wrong idea. I think that's the wrong mindset to go into it, because that's very specific to them. We're in a reality of the SPL where the meta isn't defined. There isn't a singular meta. It's literally everybody has their own unique game plan, and you shift it to when you play against certain teams to try to mitigate what they do. You're trying to impose your game plan on them. And yeah, Zach, that's what everything is. But it's different now in the SPL, because before you're trying to impose your will on the other team, but you're all starting in the same positions, and you're just trying to either be super early game or super late game or something like that. The way that you would play against them was where you were trying to win the game as far as time goes. but that's not really what it is now. There is that aspect of it, but it's also like, okay, we're gonna put magical solos, so that kind of changes how you have to build. That changes who you play up against. That we're gonna play magical ADCs, magical carries. So like, okay, well, they win pressure against these guns, so we can play against there. We're gonna play XYZ, so that changes how you have to handle that, right? But there's also the fact like you can just play Chernobog and Morrigan, and you could still play traditional Smite where you have a hunter, a guardian, a mage, an assassin, and a warrior. That is still something you can very much do as long as you do it well. And I think people kind of are losing that. They're getting lost in the sauce, right? They're getting lost in the forest through the trees, and all these other metaphors that I'm not sure I'm exactly using correctly. The reason why Renegades is as good as they are and the way that they won is the synergy and the comms. SB or and chat is saying the meta right now is finding 5 players that have the best synergy together because of Renegades, and he's absolutely correct. I've gone on this rant. I've gone on this tirade a few times. If you watch Renegades run through MSI, outside of like a couple instances, Renegades don't ever do anything mesmerizing, transcending the game of Smite. There's a few times they do some highlight stuff. Raffer frame perfect rezzing somebody with Capriel. Like that's pretty cool. There's things like that. But largely, they just have communication of like, okay, we need to go do this. We're doing that. Okay, they're here. Can we do this? No, we have to go do that. We have to defend this. And, they have really good open channels of communication, and they just work. They understand each other, and that's really solid. Going back to Rival and Dig, I think Rival is coming into the set with a lot more, a lot bigger chip on their shoulder. It's interesting to see Nate and Panda Cat kind of in that middle lane, as opposite each other in the middle lane, because Panda Cat just moved over from ADC into mid, and now they're starting Araxia in mid. There's a lot of good here from both sides. Obviously, Rival get the 3-1 here, but don't count Dig out yet. They're in an interesting spot with their really experimenting with the meta in ways that I don't think other teams are. Obviously, other teams did start in duo had their mid lane start in duo as well, and I gotta work on that, right? It's not duo anymore; it's the long lane. We need more defined role names, right? Because it's not your mid, it's your mage, right? But there needs to be like a better title for that. You have your carry, your magical carry. I don't know how there needs to be more specification for Smite now because of the ambiguity of things. Rival came in, had their game plan, had the chip on their shoulder. We're not going to lose this set. Captain Twig looked really good. Final K looked really good. Panda Cat they all looked really good. And Dig is taking some chances here. I feel like one of the things that Dig's always done really well is at the start of the year, start of the season, whatever, they figure out the meta really quick, and everybody else has to play catch up. And so now they're in a weird spot where everybody else has kind of figured it out. Like Renegades figured it out before they did. And so now they're trying to figure out what they need to do to kind of put their own spin on that. And so they're kind of moving away from themselves because they're always usually pretty good about figuring out their own voice. And now they're trying to copy somebody else's voice. But like with imitation by not actually doing it. It's weird. It's a very awkward place for it to be. I want to see Dig do more some stuff like this, like get weirder with it. I think Biggie's an amazing coach and can figure out some stuff. I want to see more League of Legends style play come into Smite. And I think, Dig is a team that could maybe do that. All right, so that's our first day of games. Moving on to Friday, we've got Rival playing again. Rival versus Pittsburgh Knights. And then we've got Obey Alliance and SK Gaming. Rival again, 3-1 PK. And not a fan of PK still. This right here is exactly why I flirt with putting Pittsburgh Knights in the same category that I do E United and SK. Hell, Dignitas might be moving into that category now as well. The top for me might be Rival, Splice, and Renegades. And the middle of the pack might be Dig, E United, SK, and PK. I might be swayed that there's an argument to be made based off of the eye test, based off of like actual game stats, things like that, right? Like PK has found wins against, they found wins against the weaker side of the bracket for sure. They found, they found stuff here and there against top insides. They did 3-0 Renegades. You can't forget that. But they do struggle against the top. They struggle against Rival and Splice, and I think that might preclude them from being a top tier team at this point. It's frustrating to watch. I kind of joke that I think that Pittsburgh Knights is, less than the sum of their parts. On paper they should equal like 1,000, but in game they're only equaling about 750, right? Still good, but not quite where they should be. And so what causes that? What could they possibly do to fix things? I kind of made a tweet that kind of got a lot of backlash that's saying maybe we change, we do a player swap. We trade Deathwalker for Aquarius from SSG. SSG very much struggling as a team. Deathwalker could be a shot in the arm for them, bring them back up to relevancy. And Aquarius, I'm not saying Aquarius is a better player than Deathwalker. Not at all saying that. I don't think that's true. But what I do propose is that I don't think Hurrywind was the best player available for Dignitas as far as skill best. But I think the way he plays the game, the way that he goes about the game, fit the team really, really well. And I think that potentially Aquarius could kind of do the same thing for the Pittsburgh Knights. Whether or not you agree with that or not, whether or not it's a realistic situation, I think that PK at this point, the squad was built and put together with one purpose: to win worlds, to win silverware. And so far, they have not gotten that goal. They didn't win MSI. They didn't win, the league. They're not starting off this phase as strong either. So what does that mean? That means that they are not achieving their goal. And I think they can. I think they absolutely can achieve their goal. The talent on this squad is immense. So what needs to happen in order for them to kind of achieve that next step? Maybe having, I think a lot of people would point to Deathwalker on his time with Rival, as Ice played a lot more on the solo side. So maybe that's kind of part of the problem. I don't know. There's a lot of armchair analyst stuff we can do. There's so much we can see on game day, and there's so much more that happens in comms, that happens in scrims, that happens in the day-to-day that we just can't see. And that would drastically change my opinion of things. But PK gets 3-1 by Rival. And just, I don't know if this is Rival coming in extremely hot, having everything figured out. Is this PK stumbling a little bit? What is really going on here? It'll be one of those things where, just because you're dropping games early, just because you're winning games early, doesn't mean that you will continue doing that. There's a lot of season left. There's still a lot of big changes to come with the game and people figuring stuff out. We've got a new god coming in at some point. and that'll change things up. We got the extra band now, so people are going to figure that out, and more people are going to be experimenting. We got ISIS, right? We got ISIS support. That's another weird thing coming through. Ares jungle. There's a lot more wiggle room for competitive compositions. And I think teams are going to really start to experiment with some of those. I will say out of the biggest things out of the rival PK set, the biggest thing on PK that I remember is at one game we got to see adapting on the set. And adapting set sounds like the worst thing in the world. Could you imagine season 2 adapting on set? If set was in the game back then, it would have been unreal. You imagine the numbers that man would have put up. And he didn't. There was something just was off, didn't look great. I don't know. PK got to shake it off. They need to collect themselves. And I really, at this point, I want to see them do it. I want to be proven wrong, that as a critic of them, I want to see them rise up and overcome. Obviously, I don't want to see them win Worlds because I have other teams I'd like to see win Worlds. But, they can be runners up. They can come in second, and that would be fine. Will they do that, though? Time will tell. To end our week, we had the newly returned Obey Alliance come in and play SK Gaming. Obey Alliance, formerly known as Trifecta, just a change in name, shook the CEO of Trifecta, bought the Obey brand, bought everything from I think it was Immortals or whoever. So Obey was bought by Infinite Entertainment. They went out and under, and then Immortals kind of bought everything up and had all of these brands. And I think they put up, Obey for sale, and Shook bought back the Obey brand and is now folding Trifecta into Obey, and thus Obey Alliance is in the SPL once again. And it's a really interesting team. So Obey for so long was a fan favorite of the SPL community and the Smite community at large. They had Nate, they had Ataraxia, they had Pretty Prime, they had all these wonderful, lovely players. And now we have Weekend on Obey. And I just think that's the funniest thing, because I think those are very two different types of people. People who are Weekend fans and people who were Obey fans. I don't think those are the same people very much. And so now you have people who are old Obey fans coming up and like, well, do I root for Obey again? Well, it's Weekend. I don't like Weekend. And so that's just in my head a really funny mental argument and anguish that some people in the community are having to kind of justify their continued hatred of Mr. Kurt Schrey. On top of having, a new name, they do have a new support. They kicked or, parted ways is the more mature way of saying it. They parted ways with Eonic and brought in Mineral. Mineral you will know from playing in the Combine, playing in the minor league, being a part of Salsa Squadron, and just generally being around the Smite scene for a very long time. There was him and Ratcheteer. Again, back to that, next man up mentality, right? For a long time, Ratcheteer's been that guy in support. He's like, he's the best guy around, but he hasn't made it up. You got Ratcheteer, you got Mando, you got Uzi. You have Mineral rising up into the SPL finally. And initially I like Mineral. When the announcement was made, it's like, okay, I think that was probably the best option that they had. I don't think Genetics is going to leave the SML for the SPL, especially with his team. I think he's a better shot at winning Worlds with Simplicity than he would on Obey Alliance or any of the bottom, SSG, LG, or Obey. I think he has a better chance with Simplicity. And Obey, just making a replacement for Eonic, I thought was a little strange. I don't think I saw a lot out of Ducky. I don't think I saw a lot out of Wowie. But then again, who do you replace in those roles? Does Vedium want to play? He said he was homesick, right? He left the SPL, so he's assumed to be not available. Well, outside of him, who do you have at ADC? Do you Snoopy? Snoopy is playing mid for LG. Could have been, right? I think that could have been a great fit. And then Solo for Ducky. We've said his name. Solo or Troll did eventually go to Splice. Could he have been looked at to replace Ducky? Could, Mando Warrior have been given a shot, given a tryout? Nobody knows. But there is talent down in the SML to be tapped, and people who have decided to not play competitive Smite so far. But they did stick with their squad, and again, like I would say, outside of the sport change they made, there's not a clear cut better option in all of the roles. So I can't really fault them for making any further changes. I think they're going to give Wowie and Ducky and this whole squad, a chance. Maybe Ionic was fully the problem. Now we'll be able to see if it's the squad as a whole is lacking in skill, or it was no Ionic's calls, the way that he was interacting with the team, scrims, whatever, the draft pick compositions. Ionic had his hand in and was not, helping the team. So it'll be interesting. They do get 3-0'd in their first outing, but SK just looked really solid. There were a lot of opportunities for Obey to kind of fight into these games, and they never just kind of materialized. And I think that's to be expected at the start. You're acclimating a new player and a new support player. So that's kind of a benchmark role, the cornerstone of a team in a lot of ways. Mineral getting caught up to speed with the SPL, with shot calling, with just pace of the game. There's a lot of different things. We don't usually see rookies come out of the gate swinging. So it'll be fun to watch Obey kind of grow and move forward. Weekend played Guardians in the jungle, and I'm just not sure how to feel about that. Because it wasn't your everyday average. It wasn't your Kabrakens. It wasn't your Athenas. It was Terra. It didn't look the worst, but I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. I like that they're experimenting with things, but I think that's wrong. Because historically, Weekend has performed the best on your hard carry junglers. Historically, every year has tank burst meta to start the year, and not tank, but like dive burst meta to start the year, and it has tank heal meta to end the year. That's generally how things have worked a lot of the time. You look at Raven last year, you look at triple guardian comps, you look at there's so many things you can point to for that. And usually the second half of the year is where Weekend doesn't look so great, because he does better on your circuits, right? So seeing him actively opt for the Guardian in the jungle is a bit weird. Not sure how I feel about it. Apen saying he's been watching too much of Cheerio streams. He's been doing too much something. I don't know what it is. I don't know that it's legal. I'm watching you, Kurt. Hugs, not drugs. Keep it clean for the kids. And, I like the idea. I like them experimenting. It just didn't work. So we'll see if they continue down that path of really wonky, Terra jungle. I want to see. I'm interested to see if we have them pull that out again. Because I want, what's the idea there? Why? There's a reason why you did it. Why did you do it? SK looked really strong. We had Paul on the Hell, looked really good. They kind of talked him up about how, normally when you see a Hell, you get the breastplate of valor, you get the helms. It's all about the healing. But when Paul gets his hands on the god, it's all about the Damae. Big fat numbers coming at you. And he just kills them. And kill them, he did. Paul looked really strong. Zap looked really good. I mean, SK as a whole looked really good, and that's to be expected. They get 3-1 by E United, so they come back and 3-0 Obey. Obey having roster changes and all of that. I don't think we learned too much from this set. This is a feeler set for Obey and SK. If SK didn't win this set, I'd be concerned. Last week I was talking about the set, and I was like, okay, well, I could see Obey winning this. They have the talent, they have the skill. They looked really good at certain points throughout last year, and I think they are positioned the most to make a rise in the rankings. I think out of the bottom teams, they have the most chutzpah, the most oomph, the most pep in their step. And now I'm just kind of, losing my train of thought. SK3 Obey, really clean set. And Obey kind of doing some weird stuff. That's really the be all end all of that. So we take a look at our standings currently. They are combined between the phase 1 and phase 2. Rival at the top with a plus minus of 23. Really, really good stuff. They're 10-1. Dignitas 8-3 with a plus minus of 12. Pittsburgh Knights in third, 7-3. United 7-3 in fourth, and then Splice in fifth, 6-4. Renegades 5-4. SK, Space Station, Obey, and Luminosity. Luminosity not winning a set yet. Obey having won a set. Are they going to take over from SSG? I am a betting man, so I bet that Obey finish this phase above Space Station Gaming. You can put money on it. You can quote me on it. I'm calling it now. Space Station Gaming finish below Obey. Looking ahead to next week's games, we've got Splice versus Renegades, E United versus Luminosity, Dignitas versus Luminosity, and SK versus Pittsburgh Knights. Should be a good week. Really good games. Splice Renegades is probably the best game out of the set. A rematch from MSI Finals. We'll see how Splice works now. Their whole identity was built around Cyclone and Baskin to end the world. These are, SB is asking, this is this week's game. So Thursday, tomorrow at 11 a.m., we see Splice versus Renegades. So Splice Renegades, now that they don't have Baskin, they got Solo Troll in that role. Is Splice's identity still going to be having their side lanes win them the game? Is it still going to be solo and long lane being the carries and unstoppable and allowing, their 3v3 to really take off? I don't know. I don't know that Solo or Troll adds that same dimension that Baskin does. I'm eager to watch this set and see how Splice has adopted and adapted since the MSI sweep. And on the split side, I'm really excited to see what Renegades has done and what their plan is. Are they just going to run it back? Do they have anything else up their sleeves? It's interesting. And we talked to Funball. He, was saying that he thinks it's a mistake for everyone to be chasing what they did at MSI because it's really specific to them. But then that also, the conspiracy theorist in me, the paranoid man in me, thinks that might also be because they're, moving away from that. maybe we'll see Renegades on a more traditional comp, not mages in the carry role. But I think, we should probably expect, Funball to be on some mages here in this set. It'll be really fun to watch. We're going to learn a lot about where the meta has gone since MSI with all of these changes. I'm excited to see if there is going to be a sweep 3-0, if this is going to go to 5 games. United Luminosity. I don't see this going any other way than United beating up Luminosity. Luminosity has made a roster change. They've made 2 roster changes. Belay my last. They have got Ionic support, and now they have Snoopy mid, Joshy back where he belongs in the carry role. Maybe it'll be something. Snoopy's more of an ADC. I don't understand him going to mid. But he can play the AMCs there. He can play the Hunters there, and maybe Joshy can play mages. He was playing the mid lane. So I think that'll be interesting. Whether or not Luminosity can match up against United depends on a variety of factors. Was Ionic the problem on Trifecta Obey, or was it the team around him? I don't know. I think we'll learn a lot. If Luminosity come out swinging and they beat United, that's going to say a lot about the team environment, I feel like, of Obey, and kind of give us an insight on how we can, predict the rest of the season. I don't think they will come out swinging. I think Zalia has been stale. I think that Lasbra has been stale. I think Joshy has been and Snoopy coming into mid is not the place I'd prefer him. So it'll be telling on whether or not these guys are kind of grinded. I want to see Lasbra do well. He's a fan favorite. He did really well on the desk. He did really well in jungle last year on Signum, and then just couldn't put it together in mid lane for Trifecta. And then he really didn't do much in the jungle once he moved to Luminosity either. But there's time because you've been in the jungle. I mean, you've been a mid for so long. But I think a lot of what Lasbra was weak on was a lot of fundamental stuff, his pathing and decision making, and that stuff just kind of doesn't fix itself overnight. That's kind of like the yips for those of you who understand sports references. So I have United over Luminosity, but I will put this bet on as well. I'll put this out there. If Luminosity beat United, Luminosity will also finish above SSG by the end of the phase. And you can quote me on that. To finish out the week, we've got Dignitas Luminosity. Dignitas is going to beat Luminosity. There's nothing really we can say there. There's no big breakdown of, well, if Luminosity gets this, and this, they could probably beat Dig. I don't think Dig falls to LG. Maybe a game, but not the set. SK versus Pittsburgh Knights is going to be the second best set of the week, I feel like, but equally important. So Splice and Renegades is going to be the best set because two just powerhouses playing against each other, and it's going to be really important to figure out what the dynamic and what the power rankings are. But SK and Pittsburgh Knights is also very, very important because like I've said earlier, I think there are 3 very distinct classes for the SPL. You have the top, the middle, and the bottom. And your top could either be all the teams from Rival to Renegades, or it can, it's the top is either Rival, Dig, Knights, Splice, Renegades, or it's Rival, Splice, Renegades. And it's only a 3-man top, right? And you have more in the middle, where you have Dig in the middle, you have Pittsburgh Knights in the middle, you have United and SK. And then your bottom is your LG, Obey, and SSG. There's an argument to be made for that. And we'll see if that argument, holds any water. If SK can get a set win over PK, then I think that theory holds water. I think we now have to move PK out of the tippity top and move them to the top of the middle of the pack. But if they beat SK, even if it goes to 5 games, I think they are very solidly, in the top. The last time, these two teams played, PK 3-0'd SK. But there's an asterisk there for me because it was the worst game we had seen SK play to date. And it was still fairly close for 2 games. The third game was a complete stomp from start to finish. Will history repeat itself there? Or will SK be able to put the finishing touches on those games and not feed their brains out on the third game? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks for me on this. Where's Pittsburgh Knights headspace at? Where's SK's headspace at? Which SK shows up? Is it going to be Zapman doing one-handed push-ups, or is it going to be the Zapman who, goes 0-8, but the plot armor activates? There's a lot of questions on that. On paper, Vote beats Zap. On paper, Millsy beats Neil. Zeros beats Paul? ? That would be the most contentious one, I probably think. I think a lot of people would say, no, Paul's better than Zeros. I don't know. I can't, obviously say one way or the other. Adapting's better than Sam? Not this year. I think Sam has been a better jungle this year. I think Adapting's been average. Okay. I don't think he's been a god among men. And then Deathwalker is better than Belair. So on paper, PK should win this set. But going back to the common theme here, Pittsburgh Knights is less than the sum of its parts. And SK inconsistently, I will give you that, but sometimes they are greater than the sum of its parts. And I would not be completely surprised to see SK take the set win. I would love to see this go to 5 games. I don't want to see a 3-0 in either direction, right? Like, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, SK 3-0 this. Yeah, fuck the Pittsburgh Knights. No, I'm not saying that. I think if this is going to be 3-0, it's going to be Pittsburgh 3-0ing SK. I want to see SK get at least 1 win. That would make me happy. If this goes all to 5 games, I'll be really happy. I don't know that it will. I don't know that SK have what it takes to take Pittsburgh to 5 games. If they do, if SK can take Pittsburgh to 5 games, depending on how that goes, I think SK can win. I think that they can. I think Pittsburgh will be in a broken mental state at that point. They'll be tilted. And that's how you, that's how you're going to beat Pittsburgh Knights, right? Is if they're tilted. That's the meme around that team, just like SSG can't draft. So SK, if it goes to 5 games, I'd probably put the money on them. But just from the outset, I think PK is probably the stronger team here. But we'll learn a lot, right? We'll see how resilient Pittsburgh is. We'll see how resilient SK is. I'm excited to see what they come out. If I'm SK, I'm bringing out the big guns. I'm bringing out everything I got. Any secret picks, anything like that I got, I'm bringing it out to beat, PK. If I'm PK, I don't know that I do the same. But I don't know that I don't do the same. Because I think they know that they're in a precarious position. They can't be losing games. They have to finish strong. They have to dominate this last phase in order to really, have a chance at winning Worlds. Imagine a world where PK misses land. That would be absolutely devastating. Absolutely devastating. And so that's our predictions. We've got. Oh my! I guess I really didn't do a prediction over Splice and Renegades, did I? I just kind of thought that was going to be a good set. If I have to guess, I guess Renegades over Splice. We have United over Luminosity, Dig over Luminosity, and Pittsburgh Knights over SK. It'll be an interesting set of games. I'm excited for them. And I think we'll learn a lot about where the meta is going and shifting, and kind of where the value is placed still. I think there's a lot of room for growth still from the midseason patch. We're not done breaking Smite yet, boys and girls. We're here to do a lot more work. That's it for me. I've got nothing else to really ramble about. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Next week, I will be gone. I will be in Jamaica. I will be on my honeymoon / 1 year anniversary with my wife. I'm going to be relaxing. I'm going to be unplugged. So I'm going to try to get at least one interview done so that we still have a show, and I might try to at least get recaps of this week's games, as something to give to you guys. But I don't know. I will work on trying to get something, and I'll let you guys know. Currently, I was talking to Weekend coming on the show. I was also talking to Mineral. Hell, I might just get one of my Exilium boys. I might just get Hythe and farm the meme clout and get those sweet, sweet e-boy views to around the Battleground. But no concrete direction we're moving in yet. So keep your eyes on the Twitter, and I'll keep you guys up to date. So until next time, just enjoy your games. Have fun watching the SPL. Don't forget to follow Exilium. Don't forget to follow UGC or myself. And I will see you next time around the Battleground. Goodbye, everybody.